All right, so just to let folks know, we are recording just so that we have this for folks that maybe weren't able to attend tonight. So it will show up at the top bar that you know that it's recorded.
Great. And also, before we get started, I'm asking everyone mute their phones, or mute their teams if they could. Perfect. All right, great. All right, so let's get started. So number one, I want to thank everyone for actually applying to be part of the SRO work group. This was something that started, I guess, from the national tone. This was prior to me coming to APS, and basically with the national tone that happened this summer, and we felt that we needed to do a review of the SRO's role in our schools at this point. I'm Brian Stockton. I'm the chair of this work group, and working with me, and I'll give it over to her in a couple of minutes. Her name is Dr. Julie Shedd. She's from George Mason University. She has her sign behind her from the Carter School where she works as well. She's also doing work with the police practice group at Arlington County. Likewise, one person you do not see is Marcia Thompson. She's a lawyer consultant that we're working with. She's also working with the county as well, but she also is doing work on reviewing police practices all across the country, namely in Fort Worth, Louisville, and Chicago. And she's also doing a work. She's consulting in a work group on SROs in Chicago as well. So wanted to do that, but also let me say this: as Brian Stockton, I am the new chief of staff here at Arlington Public Schools. I joined the organization back on July the 15th. Um, in this COVID environment, it feels like it's been 5 years versus 5 months at this time, but we're making the best of it to lead through this at this time. I also want to bring you greetings on our superintendent, Francisco Duran. Francisco, the superintendent, actually had another engagement with the special education PTA this evening, and he's the featured speaker, so he could not make it. However, when we do our public hearing, which Julia will talk about a little later, he will actually introduce the group and tell them, give you his well wishes on everything as well. And so with that, now this has been a long process. We started with the charge that you all have seen several times. But one thing I want to point out in the charge is that, what we wanted, I'm not going to read it to you, but again, we want to examine, this is an examination of maybe what come out of this would be, something we may reinvent, limit, or terminate the role of SROs and the school partnership in Arlington Public Schools, and so to support our mission. So this is a conversation over the next couple of months. We're looking to you all to bring recommendations to our school board and our superintendent. This is just one phase. When we end this thing I would say in May, in June, we're going to present recommendations to the superintendent and also the school board to consider, not to consider, but to make changes for the following school year. And so again, this is a very, very, very important part. You guys are a very important part of this process. One other thing I want to mention as well is that as we were planning this, as the adults were planning this whole thing, I was able to get with the Council of Great City Schools and talk to other school districts, Minneapolis and Oakland, who've actually gone through this process. And basically, they gave me a couple of tips. And being adults, it was in my blind spot. They said one of the most important things as far as doing a review of SROs in schools was student voice. And so about a month and a half through this process, we were like, what? How did we forget that? And so what we did was we actually did an application to students, and we have 28 students who are on the call with you right now who are going to be part of this group. It was 28 students who applied. And actually, what we did was we accepted all 28 of those students. And what we're going to do is, even though we have 4 subgroups, we have a youth advisory council. And basically, the youth advisory council will meet separately. However, they will self-select 8 students. There's just 2 students for every group, every subgroup that you all are on, to be part of your subgroup. So there'll be like a liaison from the youth advisory council to the subgroup and back and forth. We had to make sure that most important piece of the student voice was part of this whole process. And so I'm very excited to have all of our students in that group. I would say outside of the students, but in your group, in the group of 40 that we also have alumni that have actually joined this group. But this is a very carefully selected group, a very diverse group. I would say diverse ethnicity, race, geography, all over, I would say the county of Arlington. And I wanted to do this just to make sure that we come up with have great conversation, we do great research, and we do something that's groundbreaking, historic, that's best for our students at Arlington Public Schools. So I'm really excited about this whole thing, and I hope you all are too. I got some my facilitator is great, my consultant is great, and also I have to mention and give I would say a thanks to Nancy Van Doren. Nancy Van Doren has been the board liaison to this APS SRO work group, and she has been extremely instrumental to me in leading me, especially being new here at Arlington Public Schools, to make sure we do this thing right. And what I would say, I have to say greetings on her behalf as well, as she would, I would say, she has been instrumental, and she is very, very proud of the work group. She said there's never been a work group this diverse at Arlington Public Schools. And so I'm excited about that and the help that she helped me bring along with that as well. So with that, I'm also, so again, we have the charge. I won't insult your intelligence by reading to you. You've seen it several times. We can talk about it when we start meeting. But if you have any questions, you can surely email me. Also, one thing I want to say is this. This is a large group. And so we have Chris Brown from our our Information Services Department on the phone, just in case anyone has any issues. We're going to talk about communications tools, but this is not going to be perfect, you know. So if there's like some wrinkles here and there technology-wise, please give us grace. Bear with us. But I'm pretty sure by the time we end up in June, we'll have great recommendations. And also, I think a lot of people of Arlington would have met each other, and I think this is going to be a great collaborative effort. I hope so. That's what it's going to be. Also, I want to introduce a couple of people as well. I have a couple of staff facilitators that are going to be working with me on this, and their role is going to be, they're going to be assigned to each one of the subgroups. So just so that if there's research that's needed from inside of APS, if there's any information, they can get that information for you. We're also, they're going, as we get the groups going, we're not going to talk about it in this meeting, but we will plan it in January. We will have a chair for each group as well. And the staff facilitator will liaison with the chair of the group. Likewise, we also have our ACPD as well. They're going to be liaisons to the group on this process, and they will actually work with them as well. So, and I'll let Julie talk more about that. But I want to kind of introduce, I guess, I'm not sure they can just raise their hand, but Zack Pope, Zachary Pope will be one of the staff facilitators work with us. Cindy Shaw is another staff facilitator that will be working with us, and also Robert Hanson will be working with us. We are actually in the process of gathering one more staff facilitator that will be joining the group that will be assigned to the fourth group. But again, thank you for the application. And I know it's a long application, you all. I heard it a million times. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure we had the great interest of people, and we wanted to make sure we had a great, I'd say, diversity of thought. And I have to tell you, we have great diversity of thought. This is going to be a great conversation. And again, I think this is going to be historic, whatever you all are going to come up with. With that, I want to give it over to my facilitator, my friend over the last 4 months, Dr. Julie Shedd, to go through an introduction of herself, also other introductions of the officers, and she's going to walk through the rest of the process for us. So again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And again, I bring you greetings on behalf of Francisco Duran as well. Thank you. Dr. Shedd.
Thank you, Brian. So I'm hoping that you all can actually see the agenda document that I just put up.
Yes.
We have our agenda tonight is really about an orientation and just getting our process started. We're going to get an opportunity in January when we really get into the work that we're doing to get to know each other a little bit more, particularly in our subgroups, and get to build some relationships. So we're not going to get to all of that tonight. Recognize that we are not, but we will get there before we start really getting into our work in earnest. So Brian's already welcomed you. You all have had a chance to look at the work group charge. We're doing some introductions. We'll talk a little bit about some of the communication tools, but then the bulk of what I want to do tonight is spend some time on what our schedule is and the meeting plan that we have to get us from now, December 9th, to May and June, when we start to have recommendations, form some recommendations. We also want to talk a little bit about the public hearing.
So Julie, one quick thing. I'm glad I made the statement about technology. The agenda is flashing. I'm gonna see if I can
Okay.
share it.
Well, I can also stop sharing it for a minute. Okay, so I can just talk about it for the moment, and then we will work that out. So we're going to talk about communication tools. They've seen the agenda, so we'll talk about the schedule and a meeting plan, and then we're going to look at what we're going to do for the public hearing, and then talk a little bit about our subgroups. So again, welcome. I'm glad you all are here. And for some reason, my animals are very excited about being in the room with me, so I apologize for any of the noise they're making in the background. First, before we do that, we have 4 members of Arlington County Police Department that are going to be serving as kind of subject matter experts for us, as well as liaisons. And I want to give them just a minute to introduce themselves and say something about their background specific to school resource officers. So I'm actually just going to go down the list as I have it written down, and maybe ask if Captain Scott Linder, can you unmute and just introduce yourself briefly?
Hello, I'm glad you all can make it tonight. I'm Captain Linder. I've been assigned to the Community Outreach and SRO program since June, when Captain Wayne Vincent, who we'll talk in a second, was moved to Human Resources. So I'm currently the one in charge of our Community Outreach and our SRO program. So I really look forward to this opportunity, and look forward to getting started in January. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Captain Vincent?
Good evening, everyone. Glad to be with you. Again, my name is Wayne Vincent. I'm a captain with the police department. I've been with the department and with Arlington for about 25 years. I'm currently the commander of our human resources section that basically allows me to supervise our training unit and all hiring of civilian and sworn staff. My previous position, as Scott said, I supervised our community resource section from 2017 to about May of this year, which again covered our school resource officers unit as well as our community outreach. And again, I'm really excited to be here with you all, and I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Lieutenant Nowak?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Nowak. I've been with the department for 30+ years. Over half of my career has been spent with the SRO unit, either as an SRO or as a supervisor. I am currently assigned to the criminal investigation section right now, but I enjoy working with the kids, and I've seen the SRO program change over the years due to various circumstances. But I look forward to looking at it and seeing what everybody has to offer as far as how we can move forward with this. Thank you.
Thanks. And Lieutenant Pilko, I don't see in the list, but let me just be quiet for a second and see if you're a call-in user.
No, he's not.
Okay. So we do have the 4 representatives of Arlington County PD, and each one of them is going to be working with one of our subgroups, and they're going to be a conduit for information, as an opportunity for you to get information from the police department, ask questions about how the SRO program has gone, and really to serve as a resource to our group. Really, and that reflects one of the primary goals that I think we have. There's 4 goals that I think we have of moving through this process, or that I have about us having a good process. The first is that Brian mentioned that a lot of this is stemming from a national conversation, and that's really important because that's what got us into this moment. And now we need to start moving from that national conversation to having our work be Arlington specific. So thinking about what's happening in Arlington, what is the context, what's working, what's special about the communities, what's special about what's happening in the schools and related to SROs. So we're going to try really hard where we can to focus in on the Arlington specific context. And that's what I think the officers, as well as our school administrators, who are other liaisons that Brian already had introduced, are going to help us do is focus in on what's happening in Arlington schools and our students, obviously. The student voices, and like I said, there'll be 2 of those on working with each of our subgroups, and we're going to have our group of 28 that's meeting at the same days our adult group is meeting. That student voice is going to be really important about bringing us to an Arlington-focused context.
Absolutely. Julie, let me just stop for 1 second. And I'm looking at the chat. We have, you've been asked, could we, I'm not sure how to do it, but if you could pin your face, or Chris, could you help her pin her face? So some on the phone, maybe reading your lips. And so, but I just want to make sure they can do that.
I don't know if it's technically possible to pin my face, but I can try to stop moving
No,
if
but
that's useful.
no, we got you. You're bigger. You're fine.
Okay. Okay. So the second goal that we really have is that you were asked some questions in our application about whether you think that SROs should stay in the schools or not. And there was an option of yes, no, and then not sure. And that was really a useful piece of information for us to have to make sure we had a diversity of opinions on this group. And we'd be certainly happy to share out, and we can send out over email the summary table that we have about what the different how that diversity of opinion showed up in this group. But really moving forward, this isn't going to be a conversation about a binary yes or no. It's going to be about what do we want that relationship between the school system and the SRO or the police department to look like, particularly related to SROs. So we're not going to be doing kind of a binary yes, no, but really trying to think about the different elements, the different roles that SROs play, and what is appropriate or not appropriate. Where do we want them, not want them as a community moving forward? The third goal is to try to, as much as we can, keep ourselves forward focused. We're going to have several opportunities to hear from the community. I'm sure many of you have positive, negative, complicated experiences that you want to talk about, and we're going to need to hear those and then take our conversation forward focused about what we want the future to hold. And so I'm going to try to keep us where we need to be in looking that way. The other and probably most important goal, at least that I have of this whole process, is that we're creating a multitude of opportunities for students, parents, administrators, our larger community to feel heard in this process. So we'll have an opportunity we'll talk about later for a town hall. We're going to have some additional opportunities to do some stakeholder engagement groups in March and April. But the primary goal of this part of the process, this 6-month period, is to really engage the community in a meaningful way to be the starting point of any set of recommendations, any change moving forward. And that's probably the primary goal of what we're up to. So having said that, let me maybe say a little bit about a couple of the tools that we're using. So we are planning to meet in Microsoft Teams. I'm so excited that I'm really excited that many of you had no trouble logging in tonight. I think that's fantastic. Where we can, we're hoping that people will be able to log into Microsoft Teams versus call in. The structure of our meetings is that we're going to start each meeting as a large group, and that will be one Microsoft meeting. And then we're going to move into our Microsoft or our subgroups, and that will be a second Teams meeting. So you'll actually be seeing 2 introductions to that.
Yep. And could you just, and also just for everyone to know that, again, we will start the meetings every monthly. We will start the meetings as one large group. That portion of the meeting will be public. At that point, all of Arlington citizens or whoever wants to join, they will be able to join that part of the program. So it will be like the first 30 to 45 minutes of each meeting every month. And then after that, after we have that portion of the meeting, all of us, again, as she's pointing out, you'll have another, I guess we'll have another way for you to get into breakout groups, for you all to be able to work together to again come up with recommendations that we need by May at that point. And I just have to say this, I'm sorry if I'm being too verbose, but one thing is that, in this environment, we would love to be in person. But I do think that we've had a lot of meetings to set this up. Where again, I think the breakout groups will be fine. But I just wanted to make the point, Julie, that the first 30 to 45 minutes of those meetings will be public. And so basically, again, there are a lot of people who applied. We want to give an opportunity for people to still be a part of this as well. And again, we have our engaged space, but just wanted to make the point that the first 30 minutes of every one of our meetings through June will be public, and then we will break out into our breakout group that will be private at that point, just amongst your groups. So sorry about that, Jill.
That's okay, thanks. And let me actually go back because I see a question I missed, which was to ask to clarify what I mean by not binary. The only 2 choices that we have are not that, let me say that differently. The binary choice, as I see it, would be that SROs are in the schools looking exactly like that relationship looks right now, or we're saying take the SROs out completely, right? That would be the binary yes or no. What we're actually looking at is, yes, that there is an option that there are not SROs in schools. There's also a whole range of options about SROs being in schools but in certain parts of school and having certain relationships with certain elements of the school. And that's actually where our subgroups are really looking, is trying to break down the 4 different kinds of roles that SROs might play. Yeah. So that's what I mean by it's not just an either or, they're either in or they're out. There's a possibility that we do not have a regular presence of SROs in the schools. And then there's all sorts of possibilities about what any kind of presence might look like. And those aren't predefined possibilities. Those are possibilities for us to think about together.
Absolutely. And I would like to say, just embellish on that again, as you look at the charge, the line that I read from the charge, everything's on the table. Again, that's why we have all of you to actually to come up with recommendations for what this is going to look like. So Julie, back, sorry about that.
That's okay. I'm going to maybe stop there and make sure that I've answered that question, that between Brian and I, we've answered the question. So not having SROs in schools is on the table. Having SROs in schools in whatever orientation that might be in a variety of different ways is on the table.
Yeah. And again, just like the charge states, we're hoping, again, this group that we've selected, we hope, again, reinventing, not having them in school or reinventing the way, again, that will be this group, and that's how we will facilitate this conversation over the next 6 months.
Great. Okay. So we are going to be using Teams. We have some ability to provide tech support if people need some help to make sure that you're using it effectively. I put in one of the very first messages we sent that if anyone needs support with connectivity or equipment to be able to do this effectively, please let us know, because our goal is to really have good engagement. And we will not, for the most part, be 60-something people in the same room. We're going to be in smaller groups and working in different smaller teams so that we can be more engaged. The other thing we're going to be using, I think, is a way to share some documents, particularly as we start working towards, Brian, I think you can probably stop sharing the agenda. And that way people can see more faces and get more connection. But we will be using a Google platform, a Google document platform, for us to be able to share documents, working documents that the groups may pull together. That's in addition to what we're going to have on the Engage page, which is where we're going to be putting a lot of the resource documents. So you'll be seeing some more things from us going there. So let me just stop for a second and see, do we have any concerns about technology that anyone wants us to take on for the larger group? I see a question about seeing more than 9 faces at a time and that you can use the large gallery view. There was a question, yeah, about live captioning. We could probably put that on. Sure. So in terms of thinking about the hand raising function, particularly when the large group, it's either going to be at the bottom of your screen or at the top. It depends which application you're in. You should have a little bar that gives you the video on or off, your microphone on or off, the option to share the screen, and then right next to that is a little hand. And so we will be paying attention to that raised hand function, particularly when we're in a large group. So if you're able to use that, that'll help us quite a bit, because we can't see the physical hand and can't see enough body language in the virtual world to know if you want to speak. So I would definitely pay attention to that raise hand function. And then you do have some options if there's 3 little white dots next to each other on that same panel that would allow you to potentially change how you're looking at the, make some changes to the screens. All right. And yeah, we'll be putting out some specific directions about the breakout rooms. And actually, for clarity's sake, we'll be using a different room for each subgroup, just to make that really clear. Right now, I did mention at the beginning, we are recording this session. As Brian said, our open meetings will be visible to everyone, and then we'll be having some opportunity for smaller work sessions. Okay, there's a question, I guess. Thank you, Kathleen. I didn't see it. The youth advisory group is going to be led by me and one of my PhD students. So they will have the opportunity to, where they have questions and the youth would like to have the police come in and talk with them about specifics, they'll have the opportunity to do that. but that group is going to be led by myself and a PhD student whose name is Umed Partov, who'll be leading that group. Great. All right. Okay. Thank you, and I appreciate. Thank you, Kathleen, for surfacing that question again, because I had definitely lost it in the chat. Brian, would you mind sharing the meeting plan document?
Sure, no problem.
So what we've done is kind of laid out a plan for how we get from a group of 60-something people right now, that includes our Youth Advisory Council and 10 community members on each of our subgroups, to hopefully some kind of recommendation set that we can present to the superintendent and the board at the end in June. And so we've got a work plan. It has a big draft in the back of it, because we are going to do the best we can, but some things might change along the way. And I'm going to be looking for our subgroup chairs to help let me know and let Brian know if we are not able to keep on that timeline.
There we go. Okay.
Right.
She's ready to go forward. You can go.
Yeah. So we've got this first group meeting here, as you can see, where we're talking about scheduled meeting plans. We may get a chance to do some subgroup introductions. We'll see if we get there. January 13th, and I'll spend some more time talking about this in a minute, we are going to have start out. Our very first item is going to be to get some community input from a broader group. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. In January, we're going to start with having an opportunity for us to connect with each other and get to really introduce ourselves to each other. So our Youth Advisory Council is going to have some opportunity to get to know each other as a separate group. Our large or adult group will get a chance to do that then in the afternoon, and then we're going to bring both groups together to do larger group introductions. And so this is really we're not going to be doing business on the 23rd. What we're going to be business in the sense of deliberation. We're going to be doing the business of getting this group together to be able to figure out how we want to work together. How are we going to make decisions? How are we going to get feedback that's productive? How are we going to work together around topics that are going to be hard? So building some trust and building some ability to have hard conversation in productive ways. So that's going to be January 23rd. You had that on your schedule already. Brian, could you scroll down a little bit?
Sure.
So then we'll start then on the 26th with our first of our set of monthly meetings. So we're scheduled to have one meeting a month from the end of January through May. I'm not seeing the scroll, Brian, so I don't know if it's my computer or...
January 26th is at the top. Can you?
Okay, I am not seeing it that way, but...
Okay.
So January 26th, we are going to start with our monthly meetings, and each one of those is going to have some particular deliverables that we do between meetings. And they are in that work plan that I also emailed out earlier, so you can take a look at that and see some of the details. The data requests for the most part are likely going to be in that January to February timeframe. So that first meeting that I think on January 26th, when we get into our small group meetings, we're really going to be looking at identifying our information and data needs and figuring out who can then get that information for us. So that's where our staff liaisons and our police liaisons are going to be really important for us to be able to identify how are we going to get those data needs. And we will also have some graduate students from our school who will be working with us as note takers, and they can help with some of those data requests as well. In February, we're going to move on to starting to think about who are the stakeholders in our individual 4 content areas, and who do we need to make sure that we're talking to, and how are we going to get good community feedback on that. As I said, one of our goals is to make sure that this is a good community engaged process at the beginning, right? Before any recommendations are being considered by the superintendent or the board. So we're going to start planning for that in February by doing some mapping of the stakeholders or in each of our areas. In March, we're going to get some of those research findings back, some of the data that we've asked for, either from the police or from the schools. We may get it in between as well. But really start thinking also about doing our stakeholder session. So each of our subgroups, we're going to ask to do at least one stakeholder session in that March, April timeframe. And you all are going to be designing those. What are the questions that you have? How do you want to invite those? We'll support and facilitate and do that work, but you're going to be designing those stakeholder sessions to figure out who are the people you need to have in the room and what are the questions you need to ask them to make sure that the recommendations that you're doing reflect our larger community. And depending on obviously where we all are in terms of the ability to meet virtual versus in person, I'm happy to work with each of those subgroups to think really creatively about how do we make sure that we reach some audiences that may not be able to tune in to a Teams meeting at 6:30 on a Wednesday night. And so I want to work with you all to think that through and be creative about that. In April, we're going to then start thinking about what did we get from that feedback? How does that connect with our research? What's our strategy for getting to some recommendations? What work do we need to do to try to pull some of that together? And then in May, we're going to start thinking about drafting and finalizing recommendations. And obviously, there's going to be things that happen between those meetings as well that we may be doing over email and in some other formats, using our Google platform, for instance, to collect information. So that's kind of our rundown of how we get from the group that we are right now on December 9th to being able to present some recommendations to the board in June. So let me stop there. I still am going to say some more about the public hearing in just a minute, but let me just stop there and see if we have questions about the overall plan. I'm also happy to hear concerns about the overall plan. Is there something that you think we've left out? So I see a question about believe data requests should be accelerated. Sure. I'm happy if you have data that you already know that you think we're going to want to have, I am happy to have you all send that to me. So I have both an APS email address, which allows me to work in some of the systems, but also my George Mason address. You're welcome to use either one of those. I believe you've gotten contact from me on both of those. I will put it in the chat briefly, but I'm happy to start collecting data requests if you want to send them to me, and we can start making those data requests. What I'll probably do is put together a list in our Google platform of what we've already requested, so that you can go see what's there, so that you're not needing to spend energy repeating something we may have requested already. Okay, there was another question. We have not selected the subgroup chairs. There was a couple more people that we were waiting to confirm with and trying to make sure we have exactly what our groups are. We do have a couple subgroups that a couple different people have expressed interest. And so we may be looking at some co-chairs or vice chairs. So Brian and I are going to be working on that over the next few days, and we'll be reaching out directly to folks that expressed an interest in having a leadership role in this process as we go forward. We are expecting that in addition to the monthly meetings, we're probably going to be asking our school liaisons, staff liaisons, I'm sorry, and our subgroup leadership to probably check in at least one more time during that month, so that we can plan our next large group monthly meeting, because we want those to be really, we're going to need those to be very efficient and meaningful, right? So we're going to want to plan those to make sure that we're getting the most out of having our time together and figuring out what we can do outside of those meetings. So I would expect that for those that are in a leadership role, we'll have one more meeting on the agenda. And absolutely, we have a shared Google Drive set up already that I will be inviting people to through the end of this week. And I will put, like I said, the document that I'll start running with all the data requests that we have. I will put that in that Google Drive so that you can see it. We will have a subfolder for each of our subgroups in that drive, so that you all can share documents and we don't have to do all the craziness over email and have everything in different versions. There's a question about, will subgroups be meeting more than 30 minutes per month? The subgroups usually are going to have an hour per month. I'd like to keep our large group meetings to being very important report outs in 30 minutes and have the subgroups for an hour. I'm also happy to support subgroups that want to have more time together. So what we've asked everyone to commit to is this once a month meeting, and asked everyone to get those on their calendars. Very happy to facilitate the subgroups deciding that they want to have more time to work together, or even have small groups of the subgroup who might be working on a particular topic, and we're happy to facilitate and support those with technology. And if you need additional resources or note takers, we will have some students available for that. I see, so there's a data, is this a data request for how the SROs were placed in APS in 1969? Is that, let me just make sure I understand that comment. Is the origins of SROs? Okay, I can do that. I also hope that folks had a chance to look at the two presentations that went to the board over in the last year about the SRO program. And then I see evaluations. The nice thing about Teams, so that you all know, is that the chat stays, so that if I miss something that you're asking for, I'm going to go back and review the chat to make sure that I have it later.
Yeah.
All right. We'll share the Google Drive, referral data trend, that's useful. Okay, I'm going to come back. I see several of those data requests.
Julie, this is what I'm going to suggest, because the chats are coming in very heavy. We got a lot to get through. And again, we can get a, like I said, we get a recording, or we get this, we can come back to this, and we can send out a response to all the group members, but they can continue to do it. But I would say just let's move on.
Yep. So yeah, keep putting data requests in the chat, because we'll capture those. I'm trying to scroll through to make sure if there's questions about the process that other folks might share. And then I see a hand up, and I don't know your name because you're just listed as NAACP chapter, but please go ahead.
I apologize for that. The NAACP Ed Committee uses Outlook 365, so this just attaches to our account. My name is Kearns, and I think it's very important for this group to understand how SROs got into the buildings in the first place. We know that it's 1969, but in my research, I've been unable to find any context for that. So we're hoping that ACPD will be able to shed some light, or APS will be able to shed some light on the origin, because I think that kind of is an integral piece of information for how this is evolved and what's happening today.
Great, thank you. And Teresa, nice to know who the name is that's associated with the
I'm going to have that fixed for the next meeting.
No worries, just very helpful. And wow, I'm really glad you guys have some awesome data requests. This is going to be this will be great, and I'm glad we can get started on some of these right now. So thank you, Shanice. I will figure out how we can get that and work that through. So let me talk a little bit about the public session, and I think you can probably stop sharing again, Brian, just so that I think people get more faces. As I said, I think a real priority of this process is to make sure that the bottom line focus of this is getting as much community feedback as possible. So we're going to be starting on January 13th with, we've started calling it a public hearing, but I actually don't think it's going to look like the kind of required by law public hearings that the school board does on boundaries and other kinds of things. What we're trying to do is design a process where anyone in the community who wants to be able to give feedback to this group has an opportunity to do that. And so we're going to use that night of the 13th. We'll ask people to let us know ahead of time that they want to speak, so that we have a sense of how long we need to go. We will record that session. I think I put that in the notes, so that if some of you can't be there, you'll have that ability to watch that. But give a process where anybody from the community that wants to speak on the question of what should be the relationship between the school system and the police department in terms of SROs will have an opportunity to do that. And you as a group will have an opportunity to hear that. And like I said, we'll record that. So that'll be January 13th. No expectation of you all to present. We're not asking you to do anything. We're not going to particularly kind of introduce you and say, hey, everybody come, this is who you're talking to. We'll open the event, say something about what we're up to in terms of the larger process, and then just really turn it over to community feedback. and do that information gathering.
Absolutely. And you know, one thing that when we were doing it at the embryonic stages of this planning, we were immediately, because of the national tone, the local tone of everything that was going on, at first we were just going to do a public hearing first and then set this group up. But what we decided was we actually reversed the order. We felt that it was important to get the group together, to have this conversation and orientation, and then bring you all together on the 13th to listen as a group to what the community has to say, and take it from there. But just as Julie said, that, you know, again, there are no expectations but to listen at that point. We're just going to give the broader community of Arlington to hear what they think, and basically hear all the different views. And I thought that would be a great jump off point as we start the meetings in January. So that was just want to kind of give you the origins of why we designed it though. All right. No, Julie.
Great. Yeah. So I'm just looking to see if there's anything besides data requests that are in the chat. So because those are coming fast and furious.
Yeah.
Brian, do you have the list of everybody according to their subgroups? I assume.
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. So actually what I want to do for just a second is that we have, I want to actually give you all a chance to actually just do some really brief introductions. But I want to do that by subgroup so that you can start to hear who's going to be working with you in your small group. And actually, I want to start by asking our students. So as Brian mentioned, we have a youth advisory council of 27 students. I and our PhD student will be meeting with them in a kind of an after school time frame on the Wednesdays of our big group meeting. We're going to be asking our youth advisory council, our YAC, to identify whether or not they're going to get to choose how they want to represent themselves to the larger work group. So it may be that they want to identify a couple of permanent representatives that go to each of the subgroups. They might decide that they want to rotate through. But really what our goal is to give our students an opportunity to be able to have conversations amongst themselves. We're going to ask them to help us think about ideas about how to get additional feedback from other students. So whether that's using technology, hosting some conversations. We did a process a couple years ago and we actually just did lunch, recognizing that we're not in school right now, but did kind of lunchtime discussions with some of the high schoolers around the topic we were working on at that time. So we're really asking the Youth Advisory Council to help us get feedback as well as provide their own feedback. And then they'll be bringing forward representatives that are going to be attending each of our large group meetings. So I'm going to stop for a second because I see we have a question. Gabriella, why don't you go ahead?
Thanks. And sorry, I couldn't type my question in because I'm on my phone. Sure. I wasn't able to connect with my laptop. I'm using it for another meeting that's going on. Yep. My question is from looking at the group plan and then your description and even all the data requests. So the data requests give me a sense that we are looking at what is right now and what has been, and even to Sharice's question, you know, why SROs came into the schools. But I wanted to understand how much of this is also prospective. So at what point are we going to have a discussion and process what should be the role? Do we want to have police in the schools? What is the purpose of that? And that's a lot more foundational. And so I don't see at what point we're going to be able to process those basic questions about, especially right now with the lack of trust that we have for our youth in general, and particularly for our youth of color and communities of color. Where is that conversation going to be had? Then you sort of then do all the evaluative aspects of looking at data, but there's a foundational piece that we need to discuss.
So I actually think that that's pretty much our whole purpose is what do we want this to look like moving forward, looking forward. So I think that the data informs that in the sense of, you know, what's happened in the past and what worked well and what did not. But I think your point is exactly what I think the focus of what we're doing. So we're going to pull the data and we'll spend some time talking about what we're going to have as a resource to go back and look at so that we have answers to questions that are specific to Arlington. But I think that your point is exactly where our focus is going to be, is what do we want to look like in the future? We have some information about what it's looked like in the past. We know some things about why it might have looked that way. We may have some open questions, but knowing what we know, right? And we'll try to get some common ground of what having some common information. What do we want it to look like? What would that ideal relationship be? You know, what how do we have an MOU that's in process. Our goal is not to sit here and redline that MOU and make changes to it, but to actually be much more creative, forward looking, and say, what's the right relationship between schools and the police system for Arlington, right? Based on what's been happening in Arlington and what our role is. So I think, Gabrielle, I'm hoping that that's 90% of what we're doing, is that forward looking, thinking about foundationally what that relationship should be. I think the data provides background to that, but I don't plan on us spending 5 of our sessions looking at data together. We're going to have the data and we'll find ways to share it, but we're going to spend our time talking about what we want the relationship to look like. And I think Michelle has a hand.
Yes, I just wanted to have some clarification. So is there time to have more students in this work committee? Because I am a little bit concerned about English learners. And this is a very vulnerable student population, especially those that are in the county living under fear because of their documentation or lack of documentation. And I don't think we have, I would love to see in the group students that are level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and even 6s in the workbook, because they're often forgotten whenever we have groups like these.
So we added somebody today, Michelle. So if there's someone that you particularly have in mind, we tried to do some pretty hefty outreach to students, and I don't know off the top how many in our current youth advisory council may be English learners. But if you have additional students that you have in mind, please ask them if they're interested in joining and send their information, and we can still bring students into the group.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. There was 2 questions I see about the 13th. So we are going to be publicizing the 13th pretty much right away. It'll be on the Engage page. It's going to go out in the different communication mechanisms that the school has. We'll put it on social media, do it in that way. You're going to find a way to listen to anybody that has comment that they want to make. So, that's part of the point of having people let us know ahead of time if they want to do that, is that should give us the opportunity to, if need be, it should give us the opportunity to if the numbers are just so big that who wants to speak, we could come up with another format or a secondary way to make sure that everyone who wants to come forward with some community feedback has the ability to do that. We are not going to be, we will be doing something probably similar to what they do at the school board meeting, where there is some timer and then and that ends. So, people will know that ahead of time, but we're going to let as many people speak as want to. Youth Advisory Committee is all high school age. And I don't actually remember off the top of my head what our mix is of years in school, but we have one on our group that has pointed out that they're 15. We've got a senior, a sophomore. So I think we've got a pretty good range. We do have all of our high schools, or all of our secondary, all of our high schools represented pretty evenly across our group right now. So I'm going to actually invite, if we have any of some of our students are introducing themselves in the chat, but I want to open it up if any of our Youth Advisory Council wants to raise your hand and introduce yourself live, just to let some of our adults know who's in the room. Great, Alan, you're on.
I'm Alan Schneider. I'm a sophomore at Yorktown, and I'm 16 years old.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Nice to have you. I'm excited about having you in. Thank you. Katie.
I'm Katie, and I'm a sophomore at HB Woodlawn, and I'm 15.
Great. Thanks so much. Benjamin.
Hi, I'm Benjamin. I go by Benji. I'm 17, and I'm a senior at Yorktown.
Great. Thanks. Glad to have you. Rosalie.
Hey, I'm Rosalie, but you can call me Rosie. I'm a junior at WNL, and I am 16, almost 17.
We have to get it in. All right, Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm a junior at Yorktown, and I'm 15 years old.
Great, thank you. Ava?
Hey, I'm Ava. I'm also a junior at Yorktown, and I'm 16.
Great, thanks. Yipsara?
Yeah, you said it right.
Perfect.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a sophomore at Wakefield and I'm 15.
Great. John?
Hi, I'm John. I'm a senior at WNL. I'm 18, and I just wanted to ask, you said that every high school was represented. Does that include the, I can't remember what they're called, but the alternative programs other than like Wakefield, Yorktown, and WNL?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I do is this, John. Actually, I'll go back and look, and we'll send that response back to you to let you know.
Okay,
The short answer is that I'm fairly positive, but we're going to double check.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, and I'm glad you asked that. And that's actually one of the things that we're going to ask you all to do is to help us think about how to make sure that we're really reaching across the student population. So, if there are students that are not in a traditional school format, what are the best ways for us to make sure we're getting some feedback from them as well? Because those will be important pieces. So thanks. I'm glad you asked it. Balan?
Hi, I'm Blaine. I am a junior at Washington Liberty, and I am 17 years old.
Great, thank you. And say your first name. I want to make sure I get it right.
Sure, Blaine.
Blaine, thank you. Okay.
No problem.
Juliana?
Hi, my name is Juliana. I am a senior at HB Woodlawn, and I'm 17, but I will be 18 soon.
Great, thank you. Parsi?
Hi, yeah. And I'm a junior at Yorktown, and I just turned 17. So
great. Thank you. Sorry, I was used to seeing everybody's last name first, and so I got yours wrong. Thank you, Nina. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's good.
Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a sophomore at Yorktown, and I'm 15.
Great. All right, so I think we're starting to see we have links in Arlington Community High School was the question from John. So we will be checking in to make sure.
Absolutely, we'll do that. But one thing I want to say, early on when I did the introduction, when I did the welcome, I told you how the Youth Advisory Council, the student voice is one of the most important pieces as we make the recommendations. Just to make something that was extremely compelling to me. Received all the applications. Basically, people listed what was important to them. And basically, it was from the adults, it was mostly physical security, law enforcement, education, and mentorship. But from the students, which is why this is very important, because if we had stuck with the adults, we would have missed the boat. From the children, it was overwhelming. Basically, the most important to the students is mental health and substance abuse. And basically, so I am so glad that we've included them in this, and I think they will do a great job informing the whole group. That's something that they will bring to their groups when they self-select people for the subgroups as well. So I just want to make that point, how important this group is, how their thoughts kind of differ from what we think, and that's what's important. And they're the ones who are in the schools with SRO officers on a daily basis. So I just want to make that point, Dr. Shea.
I appreciate that. And Brian, I know that you had met with all of the principals of all the alternative high schools, I believe, or had a conversation with them about this. And I'm wondering if we maybe, I'm glad to have this conversation, need to follow back up and see if we can make sure that we've got representation or that they can help us identify if students that may not be able to commit to the whole program at least can be kind of liaison role.
Yeah, let me say, Dr. Shedd, I'm sure we do. Again, like I said, with everything coming to the chat, we'll respond to everyone to make sure all the questions are answered in it. I'm almost positive we have someone from the schools. I just don't have it in front of me right now.
Yeah,
or I can take a look. We will send it back out in our responses.
Great. All right, and yes, certainly, we're happy for folks that want to use community service hours. We can absolutely help sign off on that. So certainly glad to do that, as well as have this be part of leadership roles for students that want to have that.
Yeah. Okay.
So actually, we still have a little bit of time. Maybe we can do some quick introductions by group. And Brian, you have that list in front of you. So would you mind just asking folks to introduce themselves kind of by
okay. All right, great.
Hang on a second. Do we have a hand? Did I miss somebody? Juliana went. Okay. If there's anybody else who wants to introduce themselves who are on the youth advisory group, please just go ahead and put up your virtual hand and I will make sure that we get to you. But if not, Brian, do you want to maybe start by going through the different subgroups? Oh, Kayla. Go ahead, Kayla.
Hi, my name is Kayla Doles. I'm a senior at Wakefield High School, and I am 17 years old.
Thank you. Great. And then Nahir?
Yeah, hello. My name is Tahir. I'm a junior and I'm 17 years old.
Thanks so much. And Jackson?
Hi, my name is Jackson, and I'm a junior at WNL. I'm 16.
Awesome. Thanks. And then Henry?
Hello, I'm a junior at Wakefield, and I'm 16 years old as well.
Awesome. Great.
Perfect.
So if I have missed anybody now, please just go ahead and keep throwing up your hand and we'll go through. And Brian, let me get you to lead off and ask, start with one of our subgroups and just ask folks to say hi.
Okay, great. So in our subgroups, we have 4 subgroups. I'm just going to start with education and mentorship. Again, if you saw the agenda, we put some definitions over there for you as well. But in our education subgroup, we have Peter Anderson, Michelle Best, Mike Chick, Elizabeth Fabrizio, Carolyn Jackson, Ahiba Mahmood, Scott McKeon, Anna Sophia Ura De Leon, and Janet, my friend, Venezuela, and also, again, James Younger are part of that group. And so I would say, again, with 30 minutes left, I would see if we can have maybe 2 people from the group who would like to speak up and introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Peter Anderson. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to remove SROs from APS.
There you go. All right, perfect. Thank you, Pete. Another person from the education. There be James Younger. Is James on? There you go, James.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm James Younger, longtime county resident, former Arlington PD deputy chief, currently an attorney, and I'm excited to be a part of this. I think it's a very, very important issue that we should consider, and I'm certainly glad that we're doing it in this way where we get a variety of input.
Absolutely. Thank you, James. I appreciate that. All right, perfect. And so that's our education and mentorship group. We have a law enforcement group, Uyanga, I can't pronounce his last name, Basu, Lauren Bryce, Monique Brown Bryant, Tanya Chapman, Daryl Johnson, Eric Loki, Michelle Morero, Sharon Solorzano, and also my friend Tanya as well. So wanted to see if we can get someone to speak up from those groups. And so Tani, excuse me. Tani, could you say a couple of words?
Hey, this is Tana Samansky. Nice to butcher my name. I'm a parent of a student with significant disabilities in middle school. I'm a lawyer, and my day job involves running a national civil rights organization that's focused on the rights of people who can't rely on speech to be understood. That population is disproportionately subject to restraint and seclusion, which has some relation to this topic.
Oh, fantastic. Perfect. All right, great. Eric Loki, could you say a couple of words real quick from the law enforcement group?
Hi there, I'm Eric. I spent the first decade of my career working in and around law enforcement, and currently for this last many years I've been working in and around K through 12 education. So I feel like I'm seeing this from both directions. My biggest concern is that the good, positive things that the SROs do, the things that don't lead to arrests, are better off handled by other people and other resources, and that in fact is almost all of what they do. And so the SRO resources are displacing counselors, mentors, nurses, other people that are in schools. That's my difference.
Okay, great. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. So the next group we have is mental health. Jennifer Bauer, Caitlin Davies, Katie Dill, Sharice Kearns, Also, Gail Perry, Elizabeth McHugh, Kathleen McSweeney, Aura Rojas, and Rhonda Stewart. And so with that, I'm going to ask, I think I saw Jen Bauer. Jen Bauer, do you mind saying a couple of words as well?
Sure. Can you hear me? Hopefully,
yeah, I can hear you well.
Unmuted. Yeah, I'm a parent of a WNL junior and a Swanson 8th grader. I was previously very involved in the countywide PTA when the SRO MOU was last amended. And I guess one thing I would want to share with the broader group is that it's not just this year that this is an issue. There have been a lot of people who have focused on the SRO role in APS for a long time. And particularly the CCPTA, when I was the head of that, was very involved at looking at the MOU that was in place, arguing very strenuously for changes to the MOU. It actually got done. I think the conversation has shifted quite a bit since then. We have a new Commonwealth attorney. We have coming in we will have a new police chief, and we have a new superintendent of APS. So there's a lot of change. I think a lot more people are interested in the issue than were prior, but there were a lot of people interested in this issue for quite some time. So with that, and I'm sorry to sort of hog the meeting chat box, but I know there is data that people have requested in the past. There's a lot of issues compiling data. And also I think it's very important for the broader group, especially the public, to know when people are speaking, what their affiliations may be in the community. I'm trying to keep a very open mind in terms of participation with what should happen going forward. But clearly, I think everyone who's here, there's not very many people who want the status quo of it being the same as it's always been. I think people, even those who have an open mind, do want to see some improvements.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. All right. Also, from the mental health group, I'm going to ask Kathleen McSweeney. Kathleen McSweeney, could you say a couple words, please?
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute. Sure. I actually worked with Jen Bauer when we were both on CCPTA, and I was the president at Wakefield High School, the PTA president at Wakefield High School. And I feel like we weren't able to go far enough, not that we didn't try. But there was a lot of pushback. Jen's right. There's been a lot of obviously different conversations. But, I also have personal experience with my family being caught up in the criminal justice system. So I'm very interested to have this conversation, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm really happy to see all the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. All right, in our physical security group, we have Melissa Esposito, Catherine Hahn, India Holmes, Elaine Megg, Anita McClinton, Vladimir Olick, Lisa Pellegrino, Kalina Perry, Maggie Sly, and also Simone Walker. And so with that, I think Ms. Walker is here. Ms. Walker, could you say a couple of words, please? Is she here?
I don't think so. I just was trying to go through the list, and
okay.
I'm looking to call in. I'm one of the two call-in folks.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to call on India Holmes to say a couple of words as well. India?
Hi, India Holmes here. I am the executive admin of Finance and Management Services for Arlington Public Schools and a Wakefield Warrior alumni. I joined the group because I just wanted to see where we are and what we plan on doing with the SROs in the schools. When I was a student many years ago, we did have SROs at Wakefield. But I understand and see the dynamics have changed from when I was in school and their role to what they are now. But I think that is due to the current climate of the world, and not just here recently, but I mean going back. So I'm glad to be part of the group, and I want to be an integral part of the group, both as a former student. I also had a daughter that went to WNL. And just as a citizen of the world. So, thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, great. Also, Lisa Pellegrino, could you say a couple of words real quick from the physical security group?
Sure. Hi, I'm Lisa Pellegrino. I've been an educator for about 22 years. 18 of those years have been in APS as an English as a second language teacher, and more recently as a testing coordinator for the Arlington Career Center. And I'm excited to be in this group. I originally went to school in Brazil, where SROs don't exist. And then when I came to the United States, I attended school in Baltimore County. We also didn't have SROs. And so my first experience with SROs were in Arlington Public Schools as a teacher. And I've always wondered about the why of having SROs in the schools. And it's really a big reason why I'm participating, why I chose to participate in this working group. I'm excited to be a part of the decision making and going forward with next steps and recommendations.
Okay, great.
Thank you. And excited to see the students here too. So that's very important.
Absolutely. That's the most important piece. And
yeah.
One thing I would have to say as well is that, I think we heard from community, heard from staff, we heard from parents. And so, again, this is when Mr. Younger spoke, there are a lot of, he's glad to be a part of this because there's a lot of diversity of thought. And I want to assure you, there's a lot of diversity of thought. And so, again, it's very even in thought here. And so the conversation is going to be interesting, just to make sure that we come out with something that we reinvent the way this looks. If it even, like I say, if it nothing's on everything's on the table in this conversation, and you all with your diverse thought will actually be a part of that, and again make that decision. So I think it's going to be a great thing, and I think in January, once we have the team building exercises to get to know your group members, your team members, well, I think it's going to be fantastic. And I just want to say that we should ensure that again, there's community members, there's staff, there are parents. There are 14 parents that have children with disabilities on here. We made sure we covered everybody. We have the NAACP. We have the immigrant and refugee community. We have the PTAs. We have people from advisory groups. I want to ensure this was a very, very diverse group in thought. And then again, and also that no group in thought is leaning in this situation. So that's what I think is going to produce one of the best recommendations. I think, Jennifer, what you said about that it's not just this year. Again, we're going to be focused on basically looking historically, but also you all, this group of 65 people, you all are going to provide the recommendation to determine the future of this whole thing and how it should look. And also at the same time, a lot of school districts are still struggling with it. But however, I'm hoping that the group that was selected here actually do something groundbreaking, reinvent this whole thing, and do the best. And the main thing are our students. And I'm glad everyone is happy that they're here. But again, I want us, as we move forward over the next couple of months, as we make decisions, as we differ in thought, I want your basis to be the child. I want your basis to be the student, what's best for the student and how they're going to turn out. Because again, I would say that the students that have joined us, I would say they are the future. Jennifer Bowers, Kathleen McSweeney, Eric Loki, I can go on, James Younger, India Holmes. These are the future. And so again, I hope that we show them how to think, we show them how to work, and also we're great role models for them at the same time as well. So I'm really, really, really excited about the diversity, not just diversity of geography, ethnicity, and race, but also in thought. And so that's what I think is going to produce a great recommendation to move this program forward. And so whatever we decide is your recommendation. Everything is on the table. All right.
Great. Jill? I'm excited about this. I'm excited to hear from the students, and I'm really excited to have gotten to hear from some of our adult members of the group. And we're going to get a lot of time on the 23rd of January to do more detailed introductions of not just our positions and what we want to have happen, but what some of our values are as humans, right, that are trying to engage and have the world around us be the best place that it can be. So we're going to get some real opportunity to get to know each other, and I'm excited about that because it sounds like a really incredible, passionate group of people who have a lot to offer to this conversation. My role in all of this is to just get us through a process that is effective and people feel heard. And we know that these are political processes, and by the time a decision is done, the decision may not be what your first choice is. But to make sure that we get a process that feels like it was transparent and fair as we go through. And to that end, please let me know if there's something that's not working right. We will have some subgroups, and we're going to be asking chairs to facilitate those groups. And if something's not working well in that group, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there are people in there you don't agree with, right? But that if something's not working in terms of process, people's voices aren't being heard. You've got my email address. Please reach out to me. Happy to set up phone calls, other kinds of things as we go. I do need to know, how we're doing. I'd also be great to know if something's going really well. If we do something, or if we have a particular meeting that worked really effectively, that'd be really useful for me to know as well. So I think
I would suggest, Julie, since we have 15 minutes left, and again, that we kept saying that the chat was going fast and furious, and we know about the data that we need to collect. But I would say let's just close out and see if people could raise their hands and what questions that they may have as we close this out.
Absolutely. Yep. So we'll stay on for questions. If you feel like you are all set and want to head on to other evening responsibilities, feel free to do that. But we are going to hang out and continue to answer questions and scroll through the chat. So I really look forward to working with you all and seeing you on the 13th of January, and then more importantly, getting to meet you and get to know you well on the 23rd.
Great.
I see hands, so let's go to hands.
So we have Ms. Rojas. Aura?
Yes, good evening. Can you guys see me and hear me?
We can hear you.
Hear you.
Awesome. So I'm a mother of 3 kids in Arlington, 2 in high school. One of them is an autistic kid, and my other little kid is going to be in middle school next year. So I'm really, really excited about being part of this group. And like I said in the email, thank you so much for this opportunity. So my question is, I know we're talking about data, the past, the history, and everything that has done in the past. Are we going to collect information from people today, like crowdsourcing or any questionnaires or surveys or information like that from the people today, the kids in the schools today? Are we going to collect that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked it, because Brian and I were having a conversation about this early in the week. What we were actually thinking we would be to ask the different subgroups to identify if there was a couple questions they wanted to put on a survey. So as opposed to sending out a variety of different things, and recognizing that I also know that students right now are hugely over surveyed, because as we've been going, and families, right, we've been going through return to school stuff, and there's survey after, so being sensitive to that. So we were trying to think about trying to gather up the different questions that people might have and put them together into one survey that we could, whether it's one for the students and one for a community that we could put out. So that is on the list for us to be asking the groups to do, because I think that's a great point of trying to get a sense of where we are. I also think we'll be getting some of that feedback through hopefully some live, more conversational sessions, both with our students and having them help lead some sessions with their peers, as well as getting us to bring in some additional community members, because absolutely we need to, this is a group of 60 something, and that's great, but we know that there's a lot more folks with different perspectives and potentially some different concerns in the larger community.
I am a diversity and inclusion program manager for the Army active duty. So anything that you guys need from me, I'm here to serve and to help all of you. And like I said, I have great ideas of how to collect information, many things that we do in the military. So I'm ready for whatever.
Thank you. Thank you for the offer. I appreciate it.
Right. Perfect. Alan?
Yeah, just a quick question. When will students be assigned to the working subgroups?
Okay.
So we're gonna be together as one youth advisory council, and when we meet on the 13th, well, the 23rd, I'm sorry, we meet on the 23rd, we're gonna be able to talk about how you guys want to divide up. So whether you want to take your group and work in 4 different groups, or you all want to work more collectively and then have kind of assigned representatives to the subgroups. So we're gonna have a chance to kind of think that through when we're all together on the 23rd.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
NAACP?
I promise I'm going to fix that. This is Charisse again. I have to state that I have a concern. I mean, we're putting a lot into this from day one. It's going to be an incredible amount of work over the next 6 months, and we're going to have recommendations. I think that it's very important that APS leadership and the school board are actually going to take these up, because we have advisory committees, a lot of them, and some of them produce recommendations. Every other, well, it used to be every other year. Now it's more regularly. But what we end up with is people doing a lot of work, preparing recommendations, and then those recommendations sit, or they're not taken up, or they're slow to be taken up. If we're investing all of this time and all of this effort to collect evidence, to have conversations, and to be thoughtful about this work, it really does need to be utilized by APS. This can't just be so that people can say that they did this thing.
Absolutely. I would say, Sharice, nothing that I do. I'm your new chief of staff. I'm new to you all. Historically, I'm not sure how things ran at Arlington Public Schools, but there's nothing perfunctory about this process. And so what we would do is, again, if we want to kind of work it in the recommendation, I could give you my word now and say that I will make sure that the board takes this on. In the charge itself, it says that basically these recommendations will be implemented in the next school year as well. So, but I can assure you that I will make sure that our recommendations are brought forth. This is a lot of work on me as well, Sharice. And so I don't want it to be, again, as I said, perfunctory and make it happen. But again, this is important. Again, we had 162 people who applied to be part of this. We have students and we accepted every student that applied. I'm taking it seriously. Dr. Francisco Duran is taking this very seriously. But again, we will make sure that we actually see this through and the recommendations are taken care of. So again, I can't speak to what happened before July 15th, before I came here, but I can share you what I do in my history of getting things done. So
thank you.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. All right, perfect. Ms. Perry?
Hi. I put my comment into the chat, but as I heard the students introduce themselves, of those that I could see, most of the students appear to be white, and most of them appear to have attend Yorktown. I only heard one person say they go to Wakefield, and I'm wondering, where are the Black and brown males particularly, and where is the representation from Wakefield? I've been an Arlington resident 25 years, had a student go through the system, and am a former APS teacher. My experience with SROs has been they're usually talking to, addressing, arresting the Black kids. So I'd like to suggest that you have more Black students on your student team.
Okay, Ms. Perry, I think that's an excellent observation. What we did was when we, again, we didn't select the children. We did a call out. We went through Canvas to reach all the kids that we could at all the high schools. I saw one suggestion that we need some middle school students on that. I agree with that as well. But we accepted the children who applied. But what we can do is this: if we feel that, again, and I'm glad you bring that point up, simply because, even in our selection process, we want to make sure that families that have been affected by SROs and police were part of this. And in our planning, it's just me and Dr. Shea planning this whole thing. But we can definitely reevaluate that. And again, like I said, we're not going to change too much up, but again, since we're very flexible with the student group and student voice is very important, we can actually probably make another call out and see what's happening, see if we can get some more children of color to be part of this process. But you have to know, Ms. Perry, we put a call out to all the children in the high school, and we accept all the ones who applied. But we could certainly do that.
I'm not suggesting that you didn't put out the effort.
Okay.
I'm just suggesting that maybe a second round or a more targeted recruitment through some of your committee members, work group members, to get more brown and Black males on.
Okay, great. All right, perfect. Thank you, Ms. Perry.
You're welcome.
All right, great, perfect. Gabriella? Gabriella?
Yes, sorry, I was just unmuting.
Okay.
I appreciate Gail's comments, and one thing that I would like to say that I actually reached out to some of our kids of color, and especially those that maybe either had a situation, and maybe it was a couple years ago, but one of the things that I did run into, they were nervous. They did not want to participate. And I understand why, because we do have police on here. I was on a focus group. I felt nervous saying what I was saying, knowing that the police was there and I couldn't even see because they didn't have the camera on. So, you know, there's an element here that maybe when we do the stakeholder exercise of reaching to the stakeholders, we can create a safer space for those students to give us their feedback and only have them in the room, right? On things that are very difficult. And some of the kids, they just gave up. They said, nah, it's not going to change. They already screwed me over. It's not going to change. So I would love to have those students give us their feedback, but I think we need to be careful with how we create the space for that to be safe.
And absolutely. And Julie, you can back me up on this one. With that, and thank you, Ms. Perry, and thank you, Gabriella. What we did was, and I did not use these words earlier. We did create, basically, when those kids are in there, when the students are in their group, there's a safe space for them to speak. That's why we have Julie leading that group along with one of her graduate students to kind of help out the group so they can feel safe in that environment. And then again, when they get together on the 23rd, they can self-select who the two would be to liaison to those other work groups at the same time. So again, so basically, I think we're coming up with recommendations already. So I could take what Ms. Perry said, couple it with the safe space thing, and again, maybe we could do a more targeted effort. So I'm not sure if the students knew that there would be a safe space, but it is a safe space. That was the main thing, to create a safe space for them. Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you, Ms. Perry, for that.
Absolutely. And I would encourage folks.
Can I just ask my questions? One was, I see that a lot of people are putting in data requests in the chat. For some reason, I can't put a chat in there. Do you want us to send those, and are you going to compile that to see what makes sense to request, or how are you handling the data requests?
Feel free to send them to me, and I will keep compiling them. My guess is that we probably already have some duplication or things that overlap each other in some ways. So like I said, I'm going to put that on our Google platform, which I will, over the next week, you're going to get a couple different things from us. You're going to get a final list of who's on the groups and subgroups for the adults with contact information. You know, obviously, if our students decide to share their contact information, they can, but we're not going to share that. Up front, you'll get a link to our Google Drive site with where that information is being kept, and probably some further updates on things that we might have data already on that we can share. So absolutely, you can send them to me. You can email them to me at either the APS address or my regular address if you're not able to put them in the chat. And Zach is with APS suggesting maybe we could put together a quick data request form. Zach, maybe why don't you and I talk about that, because we might send that out after we look at what's already there and give people a chance to just put in data requests separately. So Zach, let me check in with you on that probably tomorrow. Did that answer your question? I'm sorry. Yes, okay. And I really would ask that, you know, if you all have heard from students that are concerned about being part of it, that you now have a better sense of what our process is going to be, that the students are going to have a time that's just students, and they're going to get to choose how they want to represent themselves with the adult groups. I don't have any authority over them. I'm not, you know, I don't have any authority in APS. My intention is to work with them, to have them kind of facilitate their own conversations in ways that make sense for them. So, you know, if you've heard people that are concerned or students that are concerned, you can let them know how we have it structured. I'm also happy to have conversations with a student if they want to know more about what participating would look like, and have a sense of what they're getting themselves into. Please feel free to send them my way. It's the young adult demographic is my favorite group of people. So I'm more than happy to spend as much time as we need to have them feel like it's a process that they can contribute to.
All right, great. There you go. Thank you, Ms. Perry. Sarah? I think it is.
Hi, yes. So addressing what Ms. Perry had said, I'm one of the women of color at Wakefield. And as everyone was introducing, like, where's all the Wakefield people? But towards the end, I saw there were a couple other women of color, but not that. But I do agree with her that there should be a little more like men of color in Wakefield. But I think that's not entirely your fault or anyone's particular fault. I guess the suggestion I can make is we have clubs at Wakefield that like direct minorities as minority groups. And so maybe reaching out to them personally would be a better idea to try to get more of that demographic into this program.
Perfect.
And you put those in, I think you put the names of those clubs in the chat, didn't you, Sarah?
Oh, I don't think I did, but I can.
Okay, I thought somebody might have, but if you wouldn't mind putting them in the chat, because then I'll just have it recorded so we can do that outreach.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. Jackson?
I'd just like to point out the fact that the approach taken to recruit students was kind of sent out, not intentionally, but sent out to a very specific group of students. And most of the students that are going to be reading this long message of recruitment are students that are very, very active in school. And when I'm talking about very active in school, I'm talking about mostly people that are trying to go to super colleges, and those people aren't the same people that are having to deal with SROs. Most of the people that are dealing with SROs are people that aren't getting great grades and that are not going to read this super long message in Canvas about how they're trying to get recruited when they don't even, they're going to read 3 words of it and then they're going to scroll down in the Canvas page. So I just think that you could take a better approach and send out a shorter message to try to reach out to students that are dealing with SROs, and that people, if you make it more direct to the fact that this is going to improve their standard when they're communicating with SROs, then they'll want to work in this group and they'll want to be a part of it so that they can change what's going on in schools.
Thank you, Jackson. I appreciate that. And we would do that. And I guess all the adults can see why we need to have the students. And that's a very important point, Jackson. Thank you so much. We definitely, Dr. Shedd and myself will get together tomorrow without delay to make sure we be more targeted with that as well. So thank you so much, Jackson. I appreciate that. All right, cool. Katie?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to say something in response to Miss Perry as well. I'm a white woman, so I'm not disproportionately affected by the SROs, but I wanted to say that my main goal by joining this is to uplift Black and Brown voices and make sure their voices are heard and in no way overpower their voices, and make sure that I can use my privilege in a way to help them. And I just wanted to say that, and I hope other students that look like me have the same goal in mind. And I also wanted to say that at HB Woodlawn, we have a cohort for middle schoolers of color and also high schoolers of color. So I can give you the information for the teachers there that lead that if you would like that.
Oh, please, Katie, go ahead and put that in the chat, and when we go through it, we'll definitely take it out. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that a lot. All right, perfect. So Nahir, I think it is.
Yeah, it is. You're good. It's Nahir.
Okay.
I agree a lot with Jackson and Yubsera for going up. I also attend Wakefield with Yubsera, and I think something that I definitely get your point, Miss Perry. I agree. I noticed that too, and I was kind of a little deterred in a sense. But I think that the way that this whole opportunity was amplified, I could see that was the best means of doing it. I mean, we're in virtual school. It's not like we can broadcast this much or have conversations with people in the hallways. And so I understand from your perspective. I just know a lot of my friends didn't even know to apply. Kind of like, I don't know people who like religiously check their Canvas dashboards. And again, like it's targeting students of high performance usually. Like I can pretty much assume that from the people I recognize. These are people who are active members in their schools and doing clubs. So they're like hearing about these opportunities through teachers they have relationships with. So we're definitely missing a demographic that is being targeted. And we definitely want those voices because of course we can uplift those voices, but it means nothing if they're not there. The absence of it, their experience can never be mimicked. So I think that if we all can compile a list and email it to you of organizations or school clubs that we're a part of that have those populations. So we're not just trying to take their voice or mimic it or anything like that, because we could never, you know what I mean? We like, that's not something that's possible. So I would be willing to like work with you, Sarah, if you want, if anyone else have clubs at their schools that have these populations and have these people that we're talking and working for. That would be amazing. I think that would resolve a lot and would just make our work more efficient. So I don't know. I'm down to do that if you guys are down to.
You know, that would be awesome, because you guys are going to be so much better ambassadors than anything we're going to write in a Canvas post, right? So, you know, you being like, hey, I know something about this process, and here's what you're getting into, here's what we're trying to do, here's the goals, you know, here's what the opportunity is. And doing that in words that are going to make sense and help your peers understand what they're up to would be fantastic, because you know, that's going to be much better communication than what we're going to be able to do. And happy for you all to help us craft some things and then amplify that, right? And use some of the channels that we have to amplify that.
Absolutely.
And then should we just refer them to, you know, the email that we were asked to confirm our participation in?
Yep.
Should we refer them to that?
You can refer to APS SRO work group at apsva.us.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Please, you all. Thank you. Thank you. Jackson, I know we're a little bit over time, but Jackson, you want to say something else? I'm pretty sure it's going to be profound, sir.
Sports are back. So like all the sports teams are now conditioning again. So I think it'd be great to reach out to sports coaches about this, because you're going to get a lot of different mails there. Also, I think that that social media. I think you need to reach out on social media, because people aren't really checking Canvas, but people are checking their Instagram and their Snapchat.
Perfect. And you guys are leading already. And so again, as I mentioned, I said the phrase earlier, without delay. Send the information to us, and without delay on our side, Julie and I get together and we'll make sure that we re-canvas. I'm going to do a play on words there, Jackson, to just make sure that we get the kids that who are most affected, as well as part of this group. And so, again, I hope the recommendations like this keep coming. I see one more hand, and we'll take Sarah before we go. But I'm Katie here, Jackson, Sarah. Thank you. And Ms. Perry, thank you for starting it off. And here we're all down to make that change to, as you said, to fix this whole situation. So I appreciate that a lot. Sarah, would you like to say something? This will be the last comment before we sign off for the night. Sarah?
Yeah, I'm gonna make this really quick because I don't want to take up too much of everyone's time. But another kind of like resource we could maybe use in terms of like social media is, I know that at Yorktown and then I think Wakefield too, a lot of the different grades have Instagram accounts, and so we could definitely use those to kind of and they're run through the SGA, so we could use those. And then I think there's also a few school-wide ones that a lot of students follow, so those could definitely be a really helpful resource.
Okay, perfect. Sarah, thank you so much. We definitely do all that. So I'm hoping that you all would get together. We can maybe we need to share the student emails with each other, with them right now, Julie. We can talk about that. But you all, thank you for those recommendations. We would definitely take care of that right away, as I said before, with that. And you're already showing that, again, you all will, you're the most important voice in this whole thing. You've been the most important voice tonight to make sure we get it right. And I'm thinking, it's just not for the students. This is for all. This is for everyone. We're taking recommendations. We want to be a great school system. We want it to be, again, everything's on the table. Again, and we want to do what's best for our students of Arlington Public Schools and what's best for the community of Arlington at the same time as well. So with that, I think, again, we're going to record everything in the chat. We'll be compiling all the information. We will send an email out to respond to everyone as well. Again, of course, we will probably categorize if there's similar questions. We'll probably answer at one time, but we will consider the questions. They will be answered, and we'll get back to you. But in the meantime, again, I know we would not meet until January the 13th. We'll be communicating with you along the way. But again, I am here for you. You have my email address. You have the APS SRO email address. Anything that you can think of along the way, any questions that you have, because you all are devoting your time to this, I can definitely devote my time back to you and be responsive to you as well. I try to be as responsive as possible to just make sure this works. But I am overjoyed by the interest. I'm overjoyed at how serious everyone is about making a difference. And I hope, and I told Dr. Shedd this, that I hope in the end, everyone that's part of this can say this is a great process. Also, at the same time, I'm hoping that everyone who's involved in this, I hope that we do something that leads the nation, you all, on how this works, how this looks, and hope that we can be a model for the rest of the country at the same time as well. So get some rest over the holidays. I know I'll be getting my rest, but at the same time, come back ready to work, and I'll be happy to work with you. But again, reach out to me anytime you have any questions. I'm available to you. Dr. Shedd, I'll let you end it off since you're my facilitator.
Thank you very much. I am excited about the energy. This is fantastic energy, and I'm really excited. And as always, our young folks are gonna lead the way for the rest of us to have to scramble to keep up with them because they're gonna have a lot going on. Thank you very much. You will get some more information from us over the next week, both some additional resources to look at. We have some research that came back from a group of students down at Virginia Tech that were pulling some data that's relevant to our different subgroups. We're going to be sending that out. We'll be sending out contact information. I'll check in with our Youth Advisory Council members to see who's willing to share their emails with each other, not necessarily with the adult group, but to at least get some conversation going there, and going to start pulling together some of these data requests. You'll get a link for Google. So there's going to be a bunch coming from us. I've got a ton of notes here in terms of deliverables. But more than anything, I'd echo what Brian says. If you have something you're concerned about, let me know. Happy to chat virtually. My office is based in Arlington, so I'm part of the community as well. So happy to also come in and meet in person if that's more comfortable or that feels like a better environment. Just give me a holler and let me know. And look forward to seeing or being with you all January 13th while we hear from the community. But I'm really, really looking forward to getting to know you all and know more about what you care about and what you value when we get together on the 26th.
Great. All right, thank you, Dr. Shedd. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for applying. Thank you for accepting, and thank you for your commitment. Have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night, you all. All right. Stay back. Julie, I'm still here just to make sure we get everything in the chat, I guess.